We are moving on to counseling in college and career counseling. You have a course in career counseling this summer taught by Dr. Muller. We used to have Dr. Pruitt teach it, who is the career counselor at the college. I suggest if you don't know her, meeting her. She has great resources for you. But also, you would have an opportunity to do your internship in a college setting. In March, um, those of you who are going into practicum, which is class, next fall, we'll have an opportunity to interview at Point University, which is just down the street for a college counseling position, and also at LaGrange College to be in a counseling center and also a counseling coach in PACE, the Academic Success Center. So if either of those are interesting to you, you'll actually have an opportunity to practice this. So you would be in a college setting, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing career counseling. You could do some coaching in some of that, but you really end up doing a lot of work, which is mental health issues in college to those young adults, emerging adults. Saying that right. So here are your learning objectives for this chapter. The history of college counseling and the way college counseling has changed. Recognize prevalent issues and mental health concerns faced by college students today, which are massive. To discuss crisis management in college settings, very important. Highly skilled in that area when you go into those sites, and that's a lot of what you do. So be comfortable with that if that's what you want to do. We'll make sure you get there. This won't, of course, be till next fall. But you do interview for these positions in spring, so keep that in mind. All of you will start interviewing for practicum spots in the spring because a lot of them place you in fall or you start in late summer with your orientation. You need to understand career counseling and career services, and this is a great precursor for your class. You'll have this class in the summer and lifespan development, so these are great. What we're doing really is just opening you up to all the topics we'll be discussing. So you're not completely overwhelmed when you get into these courses. You've heard of some of the concepts. And describe prominent theories of career counseling and specific skills associated with career counseling. So many times when I make it bigger, you guys can't, you're not in my frame. I know you really want to waste your time about that. See, the whole thing I don't think. I mean, it cuts you off at the top. This is counseling in college and university settings. Whoa. So came into existence in 1861 at Amherst College. The impetus was a focus on students' health, their physical health. At this time, mental health was the responsibility of teachers and clergy who emphasized guidance and character. Interestingly, also around this time, about 1908, is when that Clifford Beers published that book, A Mind That Found Itself, that we learned earlier in the semester, which promoted the concept of mental hygiene. He had these mental difficulties and had gone into the hospital, if you don't remember, and wrote a book about what he discovered there, kind of uncovering the horrors of mental institutions. And he heavily influenced the movement into what they called mental hygiene clinics. And in 1910, Dr. Peyton came along and he started to notice that students were not finishing their college education because of social and emotional issues. So retention rate for those students. And it's interesting if you think about it, we know that is the primary reason that people often do not finish their degree. And he advocated for institutions in higher ed to begin offering ways to help students cope and be emotionally stable. And after that, several other colleges and universities opened clinics just like his, they were called mental hygiene clinics. That's what I was talking about with Beers too. It's really interesting because when you think about mental hygiene, it's such an interesting term, isn't it? And then we have this Dr. Frankwood Williams. Um, he came in a little bit around this as well. So Dr. Frankwood Williams, he addressed the American Student Health Association to discuss the issues of mental hygiene. He really felt like it was very important for us to begin working with students on mental health because they couldn't reach their full capabilities because of the mental health issues. And of course, as you'll remember, during that time, a lot and not just this time, up until more recently, those college counseling centers, they were on vocational development. They weren't focusing on mental health. And it's sad to me that we didn't come further along 1920 forward. Think about it. We still, I feel, have a long way to go here. I feel like we should have an army of counselors in all institutions because if we did, all the other issues might abate that people have. If we had actual good, solid support, excellent clinicians with evidence-based practice, think about what we might mediate in an institution of higher education. And of course, after World War II, um, everything changed, and counseling centers started to become more a part of higher ed because we have veterans coming back with serious issues. Surprise, surprise, surprise. We still don't get that PTSD till 1980. But something's going on with these veterans. A study committee for the Agreement for Advancements in Psychiatry comes out around this time saying we need to focus on emotional maturity. And there is a movement influenced by the mental hygiene movement, 1952. Also, the publication of the first diagnostical and statistical manual of mental disorders, and it's kind of a framework to work against. Many college counseling centers start to use a multidisciplinary approach. And then the establishment of independent accrediting bodies and professional organizations around this area in counseling also created during this time. In 1992, the American College Counseling Association was formed as a division within ACA, and that is still the subdivision of ACA, I believe. The name has changed at this point. We can look that up. All right. A little history. So services provided at college counseling centers they run the gamut. They're everything. Because really, if you think about college students, and you guys are college students, if you think about the issues you might bring in or you might have brought in when you were in undergraduate education. And all of these are relevant here on this slide. So really, you would expect to see anything in a college counseling setting. There could be multiple psychiatric issues, suicidal, homicidal ideation. It's also not the greatest environment for working on a lot of issues because it's often brief, time limited. There are multiple people that need to be seen, and often the college counselors have other things they have to do on campus. Developmental issues are often emphasized in that age range, brief and solution focus, which we're about to learn in the other class, brief solution focused therapy, a comprehensive intake, and then a lot of psychoeducation. Here are some other mental health issues that students often have: stress, homesickness and adjustment, complex trauma, and dating violence. Pretty prevalent. I just took the Title IX training. Substance use, of course, and eating disorder and body images. So just make sure you look through all of that. 86% of college students reported feeling overwhelmed in the last 12 months. Transitioning from high school to college can be stressful, and also can be stressful transitioning from undergrad to grad. It's just in some ways, graduate school is less stressful because you're treated like an adult, and sometimes that's more stressful because we don't hold your hands through everything. We give you assignments. We usually don't give you an example. You're kind of a self-starter. You have to pace yourself. In undergrad, it's a lot more hand-holding, although you do have some of that, but there's a lot more support probably with your work. So these issues can be prevalent in graduate school as well. It's just a little bit different. Sometimes it's balancing work-life balance with family, etc. But my dissertation was on the impact of stress in college populations and how it causes PTSD and subthreshold PTSD while controlling for trauma. And I used the BTQ, which is the Brief Trauma Questionnaire, which was the definition of a trauma from the DSM-5, and 4 because I did my dissertation when we were writing the 5, so I may have mentioned that. I'm sure I think I have. Feel traumatic. That was awful. But anyway, um, trying to get all the data from both, and figuring out how to collect data. So we found that the more stressful life events the students had, the more symptoms of threshold to full PTSD while controlling for trauma, which means they never had what we identify or define as a trauma, near-death experience or abuse. And so the culmination of the stressors at college caused PTSD in some of the cases, and subthreshold in most of them, which is subthreshold PTSD, and there's a lot in the literature about that. And then actual diagnosis, I mean, you've got several symptoms, you just don't have all of them to meet the criteria. I digress. Okay. There is severe mental illness and suicide is increased exponentially on college campuses. We had one at our college a couple years ago, and it was awful. I did not know the young man. I'm sure some of you who are transitioned from undergrad to grad probably did know him, but it was awful. And probably one of your primary jobs as a therapist would be to do everything again to prevent suicide on college campus. It is the third leading cause of death for traditionally aged college students, and the risk of suicide is 18 times higher than that of the general risk of suicide student clients is 18 times higher than that of the general student population. Restricted access to firearms, which account for half of completed suicides, help keep students from having the means to attempt suicide while using lethal weapons. So as you learn this material, making sure you're just aware if you're interested in this population, or even if you're not, because you see these people in another setting that are in this age range and in this demographic, you'll be thinking about the issues that they could be facing. Also think about, what do you need to be aware of? Suicide risk assessment. How often do you need to make sure probably that you're asking those questions? Okay. And then in one approach to addressing severe mental illness, suicidality, and other serious concerns facing college students is a comprehensive model, and it is called the New Diversity Initiative. Nolan et al. is the authors there. Ford, Kress, Anderson, and Novak. And the model addresses mental illness by looking at it from an entire staff perspective, so including everyone. And this is what I really like. I was a huge advocate for this recently, and in fact, we'll talk about it in 2 weeks, where everybody can suicide risk assess. No one needs to be uncomfortable. Everybody needs to know how to talk about it, not just the counselors or the psych faculty. Everybody needs to know how to talk about it. So educating everyone and help them to be comfortable and understand their own biases and sensitivity. The second form of this model involves forming a counseling center research team, which compares student mental illness on campus with regional and national trends. Campus research focuses on clinical issues of individual clients, as well as spirituality, self-interest behavior, which is cutting, family history of medical mental illness, stress management, conflict resolution skills. That information is then shared with administrators, faculty, and staff, and it helps to inform best practices in college counseling. The third element of the initiative is the video development. It is a training tool for faculty, staff, and students for conveying the gravity of severe mental illness and suicide. It can educate various campus constituents about how to address and assist students who appear to be struggling with mental health issues. The fourth element consists of a program called Because We Care. The program is designed to identify students in distress who may not otherwise be identified. Anyone can complete a form based on anything describing what's going on with the student and refer them to the counseling center. And we do something similar here with drop card, which obviously we have our finger, our pulse on you guys, on the pulse of the situation with you guys, but because there's not that many of you, so we can we all talk, and if we're concerned, we say something to you. If we're worried about you, I might say, "Are you okay?" Or I may check on you via email, or just make sure we'll follow up with you and just continue to communicate with you, and may refer you to counseling, or even we've done a suicide risk assessment on students before. Um, but that's not always the case with all the other faculty. So people can now put in drop card, refer to the counselor, and so they'll follow up with them, which is great in undergrad. We don't use it in grad, but um, the fifth element of this initiative is academic misconduct research group composed of university staff and faculty, and the group investigates any misconduct and make referrals. So we have that with the Honor Council and some other undergraduate um, groups that monitor that. The sixth element provides for the program's long-term continuation through ongoing training. A team of faculty and staff designs a training module for presentations on campus, so such as students who are concerned about fellow students and faculty who are concerned about in-class disruptions. And also important to note that there could be issues with faculty, and there could be some kind of retribution or retaliation. There could be some inappropriate sexual assault or comments, harassment. And so, helping students to know what to do in those cases as well. You can also make a referral. But you could have students coming in and talking to you about all these things. So part of what you need to know where you're working is what is their crisis management plan. So if they tell you that, what do you do? Because your rules could be different than what we outlined in the code of ethics. It may be that if you're in a college counseling center and they report to you something like that, you might have to report it. I don't know exactly how that works on our college campus. You have to ask. I know for me, if somebody reported being sexually assaulted, I would have to report it to at least the Title IX coordinator, and that would be because for safety, to make sure the person is okay. And I think at that point, the person can decide what they want to do. They don't have to press charges, but we do have to let the Title IX coordinator know, as far as I learned in my training. Final element of that initiative involves using pre-test and post-test to assess knowledge gained by faculty and staff. But this is a really comprehensive training, and they mention in your text about the tragic occurrences in Virginia Tech and other universities. Counseling centers are directly involved in all of that, and we're involved in any kind of crises usually when things occur here on campus. We were called when that student completed suicide. I think I said a bit earlier. When you're trained on an earlier thing, you're trained on an earlier term, and we change the terms so much in our field. And now it's intimate personal violence, not domestic violence, and I get tripped up all the time by saying the old term, and I'm really working hard to make sure I say all the current terms. But I promise they'll change in 5 years again. We'll have another term, and all of you will be in the same boat with me. You'll learn the new term, and then anyway, we were all involved, and you in any town or whatever discipline you're in counseling, you could be called to respond to any kind of crisis. Okay, career counseling. And this is I love career counseling. It's really fun. This is exactly what it sounds like. You're helping somebody to formulate what type of career they might be good at, what kind of interest inventories that you might administer tests, assessments, and talk to them and help them. You may help them with interview skills. You may help them with their resume, help them with a job search, help in career transition. So career counseling is a really good field and very necessary. You mainly would find a job in the college setting. If you're going to do some career coaching as an LPC, you could put that on, and you could put that on your resume and do that and get paid for it. I mean, you could do some career counseling, and you could even code that like adjustment disorder or something in the DSM, because they're adjusting, needing help with their career, or maybe anxiety disorder, but one of your goals is career. So you could definitely put this in your practice. Now, I don't know that you could make, if you're not in a higher education situation, I don't know that you can make enough money doing this. I don't know why I decided to record this lecture. Well, I'm so hoarse. I am so hoarse this morning. I'm so sorry, guys. I know I sound, it was Halloween. It's being out late last night in the cold air. Mm, I'm sorry, I sound so scratchy. Um, Here are some terms you need to know associated with career, job versus an occupation, vocation, and career. There are some different terms related to the process of career counseling, such as career education, career information, career intervention, includes some kind of counseling with the career. We get calls for EAP, Employee Assistance Program, on regularly to help with situations such as substance abuse or job performance. You can be a career development facilitator, and they may or may not be professional counselors, don't have to be. And then, of course, I mentioned career coaching. This is coaching and helping people make decisions. I'm going to do a business coaching counseling session tomorrow, actually. I'm chief business coach. She's also a therapist, EMDR in Atlanta. That is a colleague, and I'm doing a session with her tomorrow because I have some very specific business coaching that I'd like to talk about. But you can definitely infuse that in your career or seek that out. So you just kind of don't need to know what it is, okay? I might ask you. I don't think I would ask you anything about that. That's too much for this class. Okay, and then there's different theories. So just know these theories that they go with career. Trait and factor, theory of vocational choice, super developmental theory, learning theory of career counseling, social cognitive career theory. You're going to learn all of them in the summer. But I want you to know that those all go with career development. That could be a good test question. We learned about the trait and factor theory earlier in the semester, in the beginning, in the history. And it originated, like I said, with Frank Parsons. But this theory stresses that the traits of your client should be assessed and then matched with factors related to a certain career occupation. Its most widespread influence occurred during the Great Depression when E.G. Williamson championed its use. Good history questions. It fell out of favor, though, when John Holland came along in his theory of vocational choice. And you may be most familiar with Holland. Holland is the one who has the 6 categories related to your personality type. You may have taken an interest inventory based, the strong. If you went and took a strong interest inventory, this is what it's based off of. This is an instrument that helps you determine a match for your vocational choice. It asks you questions, what you prefer, what you dislike. I took it years ago and it was really interesting. I got actual vocations I would have never thought about, but I also got vocations that matched what my career goals were. So it can be very validating to take something like this. But the categories are based on these areas, on different personality types. Realistic, which is skilled, concrete, technical, mechanical, like farmer. Conventional, which is organized, practical, conforming, like an accountant, a teller, or a clerk. Enterprising means you're persuasive, outgoing, and verbal. You may be a management or entrepreneur. Investigative, you're more of a scientist. Analytical and abstract. Artistic, you're imaginative. Maybe a musician or painter. And social, you're very service-oriented. Social. Counselors, teachers, and nurses are often high on the social category. Holland found that we often, and other researchers, that we do have the most satisfaction of our work if we're matched based on our personality. So being congruent with our personality, being a match, and consistency refers to the proximity of the letters of the person's personality code. So you get a code if you take one of these interest inventories, and so you get usually 3 of your top, and that makes up your code. And so it's in a hexagonal form. You can see all of this in your text. The people with letters that are adjacent, such as S and A or S and E, are more likely to find work environments that are consistent with their interests than are individuals whose coded letters are inconsistent. So you look at the hexagon on page 340 and you can see exactly what the author is discussing here. And those terms are important: congruence, consistency, and differentiation. They're going to be important in a career, but I'm not going to ask you those on the final. No worries on that. Just the theorist. And so you could kind of, if you could differentiate which theory, Holland versus super, that will work. So just know the terms are with that theorist. And then we have Super's developmental theory. And I really like Super. His view is that our career is a lifelong process and it develops in 5 stages, and they are growth, exploration, establishment, maintenance, and disengagement. If we start with growth, in Super's theory, he says that's from birth to 14. The second stage, exploration, it's going to take place later, adolescence and early adulthood, where you're exploring the world of work. That's how it sounds. And the third stage is establishment, age 25 to 44. This is where you become really established in a career and you start to make career goals and advance in your job. It may look very different than it did several years ago. Maintenance is 45 to 64. This is preserving what you've done, maybe advancing, improving skills. And the final stage is disengagement, 65 and up, although I would say that that's probably older at this point because most people are continuing to work much later than that at this stage because we're living longer. A major task of disengagement includes detaching from work and aligning with other sources of life satisfaction, including retirement planning and getting ready for that next stage of life. And the next one is learning theory, and then planned happenstance is after that. This is John Crumble, and it's based on the social learning theory, which we've discussed in theory and in this class. Crumbles' social learning theory is based on Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory, and it's called Learning Theory of Career Counseling. And it's based on 4 factors that influence our decisions in career making. The first being genetics. We have innate dispositions and traits and abilities that we inherit. Then we have, of course, environmental conditions and events that influence that, whether planned or unplanned, and then learning experiences. What has occurred in our learning environment? And then task approach skills, work habits, expectations, our cognitive processes, and our emotional responses. Through those 4 factors, this is how people form beliefs about their abilities and their beliefs in the world. And that's what affects decisions in career. I'm wondering which one you're liking or thinking is most interesting at this point. Rumboldt later came back and amended or changed the theory to add planned happenstance, to add the fact that it's uncomfortable. It's okay to have uncomfortable situations with indecision and ambiguity. That things happen in careers, and it's okay. Social cognitive career theory is Lent, Brown, and Hackett. It is based on Bandura's social cognitive theory, and it is more complex. It is involving culture, gender, genetic endowment, health, people's beliefs, interests, subsequent career decision-making behaviors, self-efficacy, which we talk about a lot, outcome expectations, barriers, and support. It's very comprehensive and probably lends itself a little bit more to today when we look at career. This theory is more culturally sound. It has relevance for careers of women, ethnic minorities, gay and lesbian individuals, LGBTQ plus, all members of cultural minorities, because you're acknowledging the contextual issues that are going on within our world. You're able to look at those barriers and discuss them. So I like that one. You're almost done. We have career counseling process and skills. As a career counselor, you need to be able to give assessments, to help look at strengths, to have informal and formal types of assessment, help with career planning, help with brief solution focused therapy, and be able to counsel a diverse population. Several factors in recent years. There are so many issues in career that you need to be aware of, such as global recessions, different diverse workforce, increasingly diverse workforce, dual income families, unemployment right now is the pandemic. And there are even career counseling competencies that you can look at NCBA. Um, so you can see what those competencies would be. We have this for a lot of areas in our field, and there's actually a career information and planning. There's an occupational information network, which is a technology-based career information system that provides the most up-to-date occupational information. That's really interesting. It's a really great resource for you. There's a link to that page. If you want to go check your career out, we could actually do that, couldn't we? Do that. Oh, those are an interesting site. You can go to that ONET web page. I was going to pull it up, but just do it on your own time. And that's it. We did it. We're finished with career.